Okay, so today we have either that white gearbox or that stainless steel motor that's going bad. So we're gonna go inside and we're gonna override the drive so that the machine starts to move, and we'll be able to hear that grinding noise, and then we'll shut that off. So, to move the machine, we just need to put it in a manual mode. To get into manual mode, you hit the green check. You'll see it updates the thing to manual mode. The motion screen is on number 8. Okay? Pretty sure it's reverse, but you can check here on number 2 and it'll show you it's moving towards the entrance. So yeah, we got it right. So reverse is going towards the It's actually the driver's side, which is weird. So these motors are a lot easier to get to from the backside. So we just need to take out the screws that hold on this back panel. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and we'll be back in a second. Just a little tip, wash everything down while you got it apart. A lot of time we walk out dirty from fixing things. Just take a little bit extra time, come in here and blast all this stuff out before you work on it. Alright, so this motor just has a standard mount. There's 4 bolts that hold it in. It's a 9/16 wrench. Just pull the 4 bolts out and then we'll pop it out from the top. I just got one more left. We'll be back in a second. Okay, so step 3 is just remove the motor from the gearbox, which, instead of just saying remove motor from gearbox, sometimes it is difficult to get it apart. So usually if you give it a good shake and a good shimmy, you can get it to come up. Alright, but other times it's stuck in there just the last little bit. So if you get some kind of pry bar in there, you can get it that last little bit to get it up and out. So we'll get it all the way out and we'll come back in a second. Okay, so now that we got it all out, we need to confirm that it's actually the motor. Now typically, like I said, those grindings that you're hearing are the bearings inside of the motor, but it's not always the case. And you want to check, obviously, before you go replacing things. So you just take it and rotate it, and you should be able to hear that. But clearly those bearings are going bad. Now, I pulled these out before they actually die because we can go to Gallagher's and have them rebuilt. So I'm gonna go get the one from upstairs, and again, we confirm that that sound is definitely coming from the bearings in the motor, not the gearbox. The other thing that you can check with the gearbox is, you see how it's nice and clean in there? Typically when the gearboxes go bad, the oil seals are broken, and when you go and take that off, that cup in there is going to be filled with oil because the oil seals are coming up, and that's usually when the gears and stuff start to go bad in the gearboxes. So we didn't have that, so that was another good indication that it was the motor. But if you spin it and you can hear grinding, you know it's the motor. So we're going to go get the one from upstairs and we'll go put that in. Okay, so now that we've confirmed that it's the motor and we have our new one over here, You just need a 5/16 nut driver. We open up this cover, we just need to take the wire. So I'm gonna take the cover off and we'll come back in a second. Okay, so this case was completely filled with water. All the motors that I replace, I drill a hole in the bottom of the cover. So there's not a hole in the bottom of this cover, so there's no way for that water to escape. I understand the people saying, well, if you have a hole, then the water can get in the hole, but if you don't have a hole, the water can't get out. And the bearings in the motor probably have gone bad because of moisture. So this is the original motor that shipped with the machine. So when we replace it, we're gonna drill a hole in the cover so the water can get out. So I'm gonna take apart these wire nuts. Wiring schematics are printed on the motors, so you don't really have to worry about getting the numbers correct. But I go ahead and write it down anyway. So you're gonna see they're all labeled down at the base. So whatever this is, I'm gonna copy it on the other motor because internally the motors should be wired the same. So our T9. Whatever they are, I'm just going to write all of them down, which color they go to. And then when we test it, we'll be able to see right away if the motors are spinning the same direction, because if they're not, this one will be, driving the opposite direction of the other one, so the machine's not going to move. So we will just have to confirm that both of them are rotating the same way. So anyway, we'll take this apart. We'll get these wire nuts off, get these things recorded, and then we'll put it back together just the way we found it, except with a hole in it so we can get the water out. All right, so we got our rebuilt motor here. The one thing that we always want to make sure we do before we install is never seize the shaft and the keyway. You want to get all the way around. Make sure we get the whole thing. So I'll probably spin this around and get the rest. I think that we probably got it all. We'll put some in here. And again, since this cup wasn't filled with oil, chances are the gearbox is still good. Usually when it breaks those oil seals that they start to shit the bed. I mean, they can still go bad without breaking that oil seal, but odds are when the thing isn't broken, it's not bad. So when you're putting these in, you just want to loosely line up the direction of the keyway with the direction of that keyway, right? And we want the box facing this way towards the exit of the bay. So I just have it facing the same way as that because I want this and this to line up this way. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that in. I can't do it with the camera, so we'll be back in a second. Okay, so I just freshly never seized our bolts. So we're gonna go ahead and put the 4 bolts in the bottom. First one being over here. We'll get those in before we get the wiring done. That way we know exactly which position this is going to be in when we bolt it up. So we'll put the bolts in, then we'll be back to do the wiring. This may go without saying, but you want to always hand thread these things in at least 2 rotations before you ever get on it with a wrench, okay? Cross-threading stainless steel in this particular environment, not that it's ever good, but in this environment it is horrible. I've never done it, thankfully, but I have cross-threaded stainless before, and it is, once it's done, it's done. You're not getting that thing out. I don't care how strong you are. I don't care what wrench you're using. If you force that thing in there, it's not coming out. That's become one piece of metal, and then you got to cut this whole thing off, or you got to cut the heads off the bolts. No good comes from that. So just thread them in at least 2 rotations by hand. If it's giving you trouble, you can take the motor and just, you know, shimmy it back and forth until you don't feel the resistance, and you should be able to thread them in by hand at least 2 turns with no resistance. So do that, and then just go back with the wrench and, you know, make sure they're all tight. And we'll be back in a second with the wires. Okay, so since these ends were fully submerged in water, I mean, they did have dielectric grease on them, but I'm just gonna cut them off and do fresh ends so that we're not dealing with any of this corrosion. We don't want any resistance in there that we don't need. So we're gonna cut those off, do some fresh ones, and then I've got new wire nuts here. We're just gonna fill those up with dielectric grease, and once we fill those up with the grease and we have those ends cut up, we'll come back. So again, you're just gonna go through and use your cheat sheet for which wires landed on which group. So I have my cheat sheet here. So I'm just gonna land them according to what they were. And again, make sure your wire nuts have dielectric grease in them. And then you have your hole in your cover. And we'll come back once all the wire nuts are on. So we got all of our wires made up now. The one thing that you definitely don't want to forget is to get your ground screw into the frame. So the one over here is the one that we want, and it's a longer screw than the others for the cover. Don't try and put this one in there, it's not long enough to get in. So you need this long one to get in there. So you're just gonna put that through your eyelet on your ground, and make sure that gets into the face. The other thing is, last time we did a video, we were talking about how you need to pull your wires after you put them in connections. For Wago terminals, the same thing goes for wire nuts. You want to make sure all these are tight in there and they're not going to come out. If you have any loose connections, it's just going to cause heat and unnecessary resistance in the system, and we don't want that. So make sure you land your ground, make sure you pull on your wires, and I'm going to make up the ground and then we'll put the cover on. Okay, so the ground's in. All of our wires are nicely tied up. The way that I did the ground was I looped it around the rest of the wires so that I could hold everything in. So that just makes it so it's easier to get the cover on without you know, having the potential to short anything out. So you want your gasket there, and then we'll just put our cover on and put the screws on, then we're good. All right, so the last thing I did was just take the cover off the other one and put it on this one. We had, the last one we had, it was hitting this thing over here and it broke the cover, so we're just gonna have to transfer the cover for these ones, because we only have one. So cover's on, this cover's on, we got our hole facing down. Obviously you don't want your hole facing up, that defeats the whole purpose. So we have the hole facing down, so any water that gets in there is gonna drain out this time, which is nice. And I think we're ready to test it. So we'll be back in a second after we've cleaned up all of our stuff. Definitely clean up all your stuff first so that you don't run anything over by accident. The machine is extremely powerful and it will damage whatever it rolls over. So we'll be back once we're all cleaned up. All right, so I'm a little superstitious, so I never put the covers back on until I know I'm fully done. Okay, so I'll leave the back cover off. I got the screws over there, and then I put the cover somewhere safe in the drying bay where it can't get run over. All right, and so now we'll just go back in. We'll override the machine to drive towards the exit of the bay, and we'll see how we did. So we're still in manual mode. I didn't touch any of that. We're just gonna go forward with the machine. All right, and now our grinding noise is gone. So that's good. We'll put the covers back on, and that's a job well done. Okay, so the last step here is just to go back to screen number 1. This is the main screen. We don't have any errors here because this was like a preventative maintenance thing. We just heard that the bearings were bad, so we changed it out. If it had gone bad and failed, there'd be an alarm that you would have to get rid of before you could home the machine or put the machine back into run mode. But because we have no alarms here, we're just going to go to screen number 1. If you hit home before the red X is gone, the machine's not going to move. It won't go back home. So you got to put it back into the green check and then just hit home. So it's going to go homing machine. When it's all the way home, you'll get the house up here in the upper left-hand corner, the green check, and it'll say waiting for customers. So now you know the machine's back in service. Just a future reference thing, if you were to be replacing the motor or gearbox on the passenger side, the cover does not fit back on over this prox here. So you can't get the cover to get past here. So if you're doing the driver's side, or the passenger side rather, when you see, before you drive the machine all the way home, you need to put this cover back on. Or you'll just have to go back in and move the machine the 6 inches so that you can get the cover on and off and then put the cover on. But the end stops and proxes are only on the passenger side. They're not on the driver's side. So we don't have to worry about that here. So we'll go ahead and put that cover back on now that we know we're good. And I guess that's it for this one. Thanks.